Hello, welcome back to Careers and Coffee. Welcome to the Christmas special of Careers and Coffee. I'm Lucy and I'm joined by my fabulous co-host, Charlotte. So, if you joined us in the summer, you should already know all about Careers and Coffee. But if you're new here, first of all, welcome. So, Careers and Coffee is where Charlotte and I get together and we talk about, from our experience and from our own insight, all things careers and leadership. And it's all really for you to kind of gain some insights and tap into some of our experience too. And we invite you along to come and join in, bring your cup of coffee and join in with the conversation. So, Charlotte, to kick us off
Hello.
with our Christmas special, first of all, do you have your coffee?
Always got my coffee, Lucy.
Me too. I've got my lovely mug that Charlotte bought me for my birthday, so thank you for that. So, Charlotte, tell us, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, obviously, before I tell you what we're going to talk about today, I should acknowledge, obviously, this is Christmas special, so we have our Christmas jumpers on. So that's equally as important. But what we're going to be talking about today, as a bit of a treat, is reflections. As we're coming towards the end of the year, people often do a lot of reflecting on what they've achieved throughout the course of the year and what they plan to do from a goal setting perspective next year. So we thought that would be a great episode for us to cover this time of year.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that a lot of people are in this kind of phase at the moment, end of the year, Christmas time, reflecting on what's gone on through the year. And I really actually enjoyed kind of putting together some of my notes ready for this today. Do you want me to kick off with one of my kind of first thoughts? Okay.
Yeah, go
So
for
one
it.
of my first one, and lots of people might have heard me say this recently, so apologies if I've said this to you recently. You're hearing it again. Something I've learned this year and what I've been reflecting on is, that really like anxious, uncomfortable feeling that sometimes you feel when you're about to go and do something or you're not too sure what you're doing. I realised that is when you're on the cusp of change. I've had that a lot this year. I've had a lot of shifts and changes. I know a lot of you watching and listening, and we'd really love to hear from you as well, like your thoughts on these reflections and some of your own reflections as well. I know some of you have gone through this, but something that I've learned as I've come towards the end of this year is actually I was on such a cusp of change. I felt so like struggling or trapped in a certain area, but by pushing through that uncomfortableness, I've been able to get to a point now where I'm like, okay, there was a reason to why, but I had anxiety for a week.
I think that's really interesting because everybody always talks about change is hard. People generally don't like change. So I feel very sorry for people in the change management profession because they have to face into that. I've done it myself. But I think it's a really interesting way of describing it. It's, as you say, it's that being comfortable in that, like, ambiguity would be the way I'd describe it, that unknown, kind of a bit of a scary place of like, this is going to either go really well or not, like, and just like embracing that change. So I think that's a really interesting reflection for sure. And I think when I reflect and I think about something similar to that, for me, that uncomfortable piece, that embracing the change, my big reflection has been, wow, I've put myself out of my comfort zone a bit this year.
Yeah.
So a good example is doing this, not something I would usually do, whilst I've been a guest on podcasts and panels, etc. But actually doing this LinkedIn piece and YouTube, I definitely, have gone through that journey of, oh, this is a bit of a change. This is not something I usually do. Even writing articles, again, not something that's my day to day, my natural comfort zone. So that anxiety, as you described, that discomfort has definitely pushed forward and has changed how I think about things. And when I talk to other people about doing similar things too.
Yeah, I can definitely see that with both of us this year around going through those different learning zones. So we're just talking now about that kind of comfort zone, then you go into that fear zone, that's all that kind of uncomfortableness that we're just talking about there. Then you go into that learning zone of going, oh, you know what, I'm learning new skills here. Exactly what Charlotte's been talking about there, kind of, doing these kind of LinkedIn lives. I have to admit, even I've been nervous doing it too. And I had a podcast for a couple of years, right? So totally get what you're going to. But now I definitely feel, if I'm so bold to say, is I definitely now feel we're in this growth zone of going, yeah, we've got all these new skills that we've acquired, lessons that we've learned to kind of grow into who we're becoming and what we're going to be doing.
And that's a really interesting point. You talk about lessons to be learned. And we, in business, everybody always talks about, oh, we should do a lessons learned. And it's always the thing that people say, yeah, we should do. And then lots of companies just sort of brush it under the carpet. But that, lessons learned is reflection, essentially. So, what went well? What should we be celebrating success-wise? What didn't go so well? What can we learn from it? How would we do it differently next time? And those learnings and reflections are really important in terms of shaping our careers, our trajectory, the direction that we are going as individuals, or our business is going, or a project. So yeah, it's really interesting that you chose to use those words, lessons learned.
Oh, I feel like I've got, stick with me. I've got loads of lessons learned. I love, I think making mistakes is just pushing you more towards success. I'm a massive believer in that.
Well, yeah, and also I love that. I can't remember who's done it now, but I don't know if you've seen this, but fail, a first attempt in learning.
Yeah,
I love that.
Oh, totally love that. Whoever
failing fast, I think that's the other thing that I've heard a lot this year, particularly when I've been interviewing, like companies are talking about, yeah, we fail fast, because actually, you want to make mistakes because you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, I agree. I love that. Charlotte, what else have you been reflecting on?
Oh, I think, what else? I would say my biggest reflection this year is that I've come away after sort of 12 months since I was made redundant at the end of this time last year, with real clarity about what I want from my career and the direction that I want to go in. Whereas I think at the start of the year, I was a bit like, oh, well, I could do this, I could do that. But now I feel much clearer about what it is I want. And also, I feel now more comfortable with like labeling what that is, because I never really knew. And for anybody who's read my article or has received a copy of my CV or has read my about me, I now am identifying and clearly saying I'm a generalist, and I feel really comfortable with owning that.
Yeah.
And I feel like my big reflection is that I never really knew how to label it before, or how to be able to describe it before, but now I feel like I've got real clarity. So for me, that's a big takeaway from this year, and I've really learned what that means. And I think kind of linked to that, how important, I've always talked about how important the value of a network is, but more broadly than that, I would say how important community is. So since I've felt comfortable and talked about being a generalist, I came across this amazing community called Generalist World. So shout out to Generalist World, Millie, who's the founder, who's a lovely lady. Just being a part of that community, I've met so many amazing people around the world, virtually. Obviously, I've not been flying out to meet them all, but and learned so many things, and have been exposed to lots of things and resources, and connected with all these great people that are also identifying themselves as generalists. And it's incredible to have that community. And my big reflection on that is how important that is.
Yeah. Charlotte, you just mentioned there about kind of that community, which I think has been such a great resource, because even I, with you following and tagging me in things, even I've started to now follow kind of that channel almost, and that has been really beneficial to me. But has there been any other kind of resources? I don't really like the word resources, so hence why I'm saying that.
In inverted commas.
Yeah. Any other resources that you've used this year?
So I've used this historically, and actually I got this from a mentor from a few years back, but it's a tool to be able to reflect on your whole year and then look forward. So it's called Year Compass, which you can download a free copy of online, and I will put the link to it in the episode. But essentially, it's a look back at the past year, month by month, but then you also break it down into different areas. So, for example, I'm just scrolling to find the correct words. So then you break it down into personal life, family, you know, what's happened there, careers, studies, friends, community, relaxation, hobbies, creativity, physical health and fitness, mental health, self-knowledge, habits that define you, and a better tomorrow. So that's like the second exercise, which basically is a reflection of this is what my last year is about, but it's broken it down by all of those different categories. So it really gets you thinking about specific things, and things that, for example, you might not have even thought about as like something you've achieved. So like typically lots of people will think about, oh, what did I achieve at work? But actually people have achieved lots of stuff outside of work as well, which all feeds into your whole self. This gives you like a real true reflection. So once you go through your past year, and then there's obviously more pages and more detail about this, there's this great thing which they do like 6 sentences about my past year. So the wisest decision I made was, the biggest lesson I learned was, the biggest risk I took, the biggest surprise of the year, the most important thing I did for others, and the biggest thing I completed. And I love the fact that it just gives you that freedom, but gives you the framing to be able to think about things in those ways. And having done this the past few years, it takes quite a period of time to get through this workbook, because it is a workbook. There are many pages to it, but so it goes through, you do a lot of other questions in this space for the past year, and then you do look forward. So what your kind of goals are for next year. So I'm just trying to find the page. Oh, the other thing I like in the past year section is it's like the past year in 3 words. Choose 3 words to describe it. I love that. And I like going back on looking at them from previous years and being like, oh, that's really interesting that I chose those 3 words. But then you do the year ahead. And like the first bit is dare to dream big. What does the year ahead look like for you? Why will it be great? What will happen in an ideal world? And then it says to write or draw your expectations, which I really like. And then there's a bit about this year will be about, and again, it's the same headings and themes in personal section, career, friends, community, relaxing, you know, all of those different sections, and it gives you an opportunity to kind of almost write out those goals by those headings.
Nice.
So this is a huge document, but it's really great to help you reflect, but also to set future goals. It's called Year in Compass. And as I said, I will put the link to it. It's free to download, and you can print it off and do handwritten answers if you like to handwrite, or they do a PDF version which you can answer digitally.
Oh, do you know what? I love all of that. What an amazing question to sit and reflect on. I also really like that it's not just work focused. And I know, Charlotte, that we do Careers and Coffee, which is obviously careers, which is obviously work. But I actually sometimes think it's so important to remember the achievements that we've done outside of our working life. And there's been amazing things. And I know that you're probably going to talk about them in a minute, so I won't steal your thunder. But there's definitely been things for me this year that I've done outside of kind of career stuff. When I say career stuff, maybe work stuff, that I feel super chuffed with myself doing, just from like getting up a little bit earlier to like go and do more reading or going to the gym. And, you know, this year as well, just some of the questions that you've just said there, you know, biggest risk, you know, I've taken this year was going to go and do some freelance work, which was a huge risk. And obviously, as we go through Careers and Coffee, I'll talk about it a lot more, and maybe into the new year, next year. But also, like, I'm also like writing a book this year. Like how Matt, like beginning this time last year, that wasn't even on the radar. And I just some of those questions now are just coming up for me, and I'd love to hear from all of you with the stuff that Charlotte's just talks about there. What's coming up for you? What are you now reflecting on? Just hearing some of the bits that Charlotte's just read from that's incredible. But Charlotte, tell us a little bit about some of the things that you've done, because about outside of work, because you've done some great stuff outside of career stuff this year.
So outside of work, one of my big things is that I have been seeing a personal trainer twice a week, and have smashed through some of the goals that I set myself. So for my strength training, which I've been really pleased with doing, and I definitely feel like, even just from a headspace perspective, it's been great. So I've loved that. And then other things, I've definitely done more in the volunteering space and giving back, which is becoming more important to me. So one of the charities I work with is called Inspiring the Future. And I have been in and talked to local schools around careers and personal development. And potentially next year, I haven't agreed to it yet, but we'll be doing some interviews, like mock interviews. So just really trying to give back to the community.
Yeah.
Which has been really important. And I've got a lot out of it, actually, more out of it than I expected. And I've continued with mentoring women in tech and digital, but I've now expanded that out to women in operations as well. So going back to the community I talked about earlier, Generalist World, one of the members reached out to me, who's actually based in America. So I love my transatlantic mentoring relationships. This is now my second one in the US. It's so refreshing because you get such a different perspective. But anyway, this lady reached out to me and we had an initial call, and she was like, I'd really like to be mentored, and she's in more of an operational role. And so that's broaden out what I'm doing in terms of the mentoring space. So yeah, and I think I'm trying to think about what else I've done outside of work, but I mean, obviously this is, Careers and Coffee has also been a big achievement, and I've done various courses as well. And so I feel like I've actually had quite a busy year, albeit that the other thing is that I've done some interiming work this year because I think it come back to what I said at the start. I've been looking for clarity in terms of what it is that I want for my next permanent role. And what I've really, if I reflect quite deeply on this, is that I didn't want to take or start a permanent role where it was just because I needed a job. I wanted to make sure it was the right thing. So actually doing the interim piece has allowed me to have that flexibility to be able to then go and find something permanent, but the right permanent role. What about you, Lucy? Because obviously you've had lots of changes and lots of exciting things going on in your year.
I think what's been quite nice for me, as though it's been difficult too, is I'm definitely really grateful for the friendships I've had this year. Charlotte, I'm just saying this because we're recording this and this is going out live, but because you and I have been going on a bit of a similar journey.
Yes.
And actually I can't even tell you how valuable that's been, because I've maybe gone and figured something out, and then I've told you, and then you've told me, and then you've said, read this book, and I've said, read that book. And we've kind of gone a bit to and fro, which I don't think I've had that for a long time, is to have that kind of real strong friendship and bonds that I've had this year to kind of really see me through direction that I'm going in. And I think a lot of things that we see on LinkedIn, I'm guilty, just so I'm guilty of doing this too. I'm like, writing a book now, doing this now. But there has been moments for sure where, I've really struggled, like with my mental health. I've been really upset. I've had days where I've, and Charlotte and I have talked about this, with days where we have been upset and I haven't wanted to get out of bed and things have fallen through. But reflecting on that, these are the things that have made me more resilient. And although they weren't very nice at the time, and they were really hard, and had very difficult conversations, I actually feel I can't even get my words out because I feel so strongly about it. I don't think I've ever felt this resilient in my whole life, just full stop.
That's great.
And
I think resilience is very hard to have.
Very, very true. And that also feeds into the relationships I've built kind of in the space of being a mentor and also being a mentee. And I've really enjoyed kind of having different people's perspectives. I've met lots of different people. I've also found this element. I think I'm quite bold and brave anyway. I think people that know me well know I'm a little bit tenacious, and I would always be a bit like, I'll do that. Da, 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 da.
I mean, your earrings definitely suggest bold, Lucy.
This year I've actually reached out to people who I'm just a bit do I reach out to them? And I've ended up just pinging people on notes. Some people don't reply, if I'm honest with you, but that doesn't really bother me.
No.
You know, sometimes our journeys don't align, and that's fine. And I've ended up chatting to someone who I saw at an event, and he was talking about something that was quite close to my heart. I just pinged him a note to say, well, just don't know if you fancy just a virtual coffee just to chat more. And we've ended up chatting, and we've ended up getting to know each other a bit more. And now we're kind of in this kind of like new kind of co-relationship of mentor mentee, vice versa, because he's now doing like a coaching his coaching diploma, and I said, oh, you know, if you want some help with that, and he's helping me with other things, and that's been quite nice. Obviously got to shout out David Barrow. You've been great, love you.
Oh, one of the best books I read this year was David's book, actually.
Yeah, we'll put a link down here because he's also got another book that's coming out. I think it's out now.
It's actually out now, I think.
Yeah, it is out now, so we'll put a link to that. Yeah, I think I'm just kind of rambling a little bit. Oh, my other last thing was as well is I ended up I can't say too much at the moment. Hopefully next year I can talk more about it. But I ended up being bold and brave and messaging somebody about something which would be giving me an opportunity to go and be on a board, which I would really love that experience. I think that would be great for just me as a person, as well as a career, as well as the area of expertise that it's in. So if I hadn't have emailed that person, I would never be in this position now where I could potentially be on a board. So I've definitely kind of going back to that reflection and learning. I've definitely learned that just do it, just kind of ping the person, and you just never know what could happen.
I think that seems like a common theme for both of us this year, which is like, just do it. Like, you never know what's going to happen. And I think fearlessness, that's the word I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. I always talk about being fearless, but I think this year I've definitely been more fearless than I have been previously, because I think lots of people are talking about it. You know, you spend so much time at work. It's so important that you you know, you take the opportunities, you do what's right for you. You know, and I say this to a lot of people, and Kristen, a lady who used to work for me, she used to hear me say this a lot, so if she's listening, she'll be laughing as I say this, but what's meant for you is meant for you. And I think, you know, I've really learned that this year, but you don't understand that until you ask the question. And as you say, what's the worst somebody can do? Not reply, say no.
Yeah.
Every rejection is a redirection.
Yeah. Oh.
So
I love that you said that to me this year.
I did say that to you several times this year. I will say the same thing.
I actually had that as a sticky note up just to remind myself. So I love that you said that. I think we've said it a couple of times as well on Careers and Coffee.
No, definitely. And I think this time of year is an interesting time of year, right? Because lots of people will be reflecting, as we have done, and start to think about goals for next year. And typically this is the time of year where people start thinking, I want to do something different, or I want to change my career, or they might be like, I'm feeling stuck. And also, unfortunately, this week we saw a whole spate of more redundancies through Spotify, for example, and various other businesses. And so people being made redundant just before Christmas, I know it's happened to me. It can feel quite tough. So maybe we'll also relink our redundancy episode on this, but as well as the podcast episode we did with Talk Female Friday. But what I was going to say is there are some great, again, resources out there if you're trying to figure out what's next, how do I navigate this. And I've got 3 books that I would highly recommend, and anybody that I mentor or has been managed by me is like, oh, here she is with the books again. But they've got some great exercises in them, and that's why I like them, because they're practical. So the first one is When Now Means Now by Mary Beth Hoskin. So this is a great book because so if I just come to this one page, you've got this exercise here, which is called Roles and Goals and Analysis. So it helps you to start to think about, you know, what do you enjoy about the roles you've had? What gives you joy? What are you good at? And start to really kind of break down and clear some of that vagary for you. Really like this book. The author in particular, she's a global CIO, powerhouse woman.
She's
really
great. We'll tag her actually, because
definitely.
And Kat as well. Kat did the forward for this, and I know Kat from the service management space too. Both of them are powerhouse of women. They're fantastic. Please follow them, check them out, tag them in the comments.
Another one that I've referenced a lot, it's an oldie but a goodie, which is The Squiggly Career, Helen Tupper and Sarah Ellis. Again, some great exercises in here. I like the fact it's quite pictorial as well. And you know, I just take a look at the contents page. One of the things I often get people to do is chapter 2 of this, which is super strengths, because people don't know what their super strengths are, or their power skills, as I know Lucy prefers to call it, because that really helps you to think about the next type of role that you want to go for.
Yeah.
So another great book. They also have a podcast. And then lastly, one that's a bit more intense, but is an older book, but I still think is really helpful, is called The Career Coach. So for anybody who can't afford a coach or doesn't feel what they want to have a coach, this book sort of does it for you, because it asks you lots of questions, asks you to consider things, gets you to do some tasks again. So these are 3 really great books that can help you to start to focus your mind and think about what your next move might be.
Thank you.
Do you have any to add to that list, Lucy?
I do. They're slightly different to yours, though.
Go for it.
I quite like, and I'm hoping I'm saying her surname right, is Brianna West or Wiest?
Yeah.
West. I'm a bit obsessed with all of her books at the moment. So I'm doing the pivot year at the moment. So I absolutely love that. I'm also reading before I go to bed at night 101 essays that will change the way you think.
Oh, that's good.
Really, really like this one. And it's a very popular book that I'm about to talk about. Everybody's probably read it. It's Manifest. I also really like Manifest. I personally feel like I've read some of those books as well that Charlotte's kind of talked about, but sometimes I quite like something that's a little bit more, because I'm a bit woo-woo, I quite like to think of things into the universe, and I do all those things. So I think they complement those books that you've talked about really nicely.
Yes, because where you're a bit more woo-woo, I'm a bit more practical.
Yeah. No,
so depending on what type of person you are, so I'm quite logically driven. I like to read, do exercises, like really think about it. Whereas Lucy's a bit more conceptual, and so, you know, hopefully there's something for everyone on this.
Definitely.
episode.
Not necessarily a resource, but something I wanted to share that I've done this year as well. Well done recently, when I was kind of going through thinking about my achievements in the jobs that I've done, was I had gone back as far as I could really, and I had wrote down everything that I had done in that role, because I think you forget, forgive me how I word this, but I think you forget like who you are and like what you've done. Because I remember just chatting to somebody on a contract that I'm on at the moment, and I was saying about some bits that I've done. And I thought, oh God, like I forgot that I had done all of that. So I came home that night and I wrote down all the jobs that I've done, and I wrote down everything that I had basically, like, really cast your mind back to the stuff that you, and it's just a nice reminder of like who you are, what you've done. And it'll also benefit you for when you have an interview and they ask you, give them an example of when, mate, you've already got it written down because you've done this exercise. So it's not necessarily a resource, but it's just an idea, which I really, really, if you've got time over Christmas, I really encourage you to do it, because it really reminds you of the stuff that you've done and you've learned and led.
It's a good tool. I think the other thing that's kind of linked to that is a lot of people talk about having a folder in their inbox at work, which is, you know, put all your like good feedback in there, or you know, achievements, and then reflecting on that, you know, you can be like, oh wow, I've done so much. Because a lot of us feel at the end of the year like, oh God, I'm not sure what I've even achieved this year. And actually it's a way of collating it all throughout the year, that you can sort of look back and be like, okay, actually I've done loads of stuff. And also, should you be job hunting, it's very helpful to then go, okay, right, so how do I get this in my CV or a cover letter? So yeah,
I think my last thing that I have been reflecting on, again, this feeds into my woo-woo-ness, or anything by Oprah, by the way, is amazing too. What I Know for Sure is probably one of the best books I've ever kind of read, because it's like a series of her kind of short stories almost from her life and experiences. Highly recommend it. But what I do know for sure is that we as human beings are ever evolving and ever changing. And it's something I've learned this year, because where I was last year compared to where I am now is a completely different space. I'm actually a completely different version of me. And I think we forget that. And I also think that also applies to your career as well. So the career and job that you're in now doesn't have to be the same, because you are ever growing and ever changing and ever evolving. And so is going to be your career. And that is definitely something that I'm going to be carrying with me through into the new year and hopefully forevermore.
I think that's so well put. Change is the only constant.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Everybody does evolve, and you have to remember that sometimes, because you can get very stuck otherwise when you don't recognize that.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you've been reflecting on?
So nothing else that I've been reflecting on, but I do want to share a post that a lady recently connected with me called, I hope I pronounced this correctly, so apologies if I haven't, Palomi Jane. She is a co-founder and head of partnerships at My Next Developer. And I saw this post, I think she put it up yesterday, which so it was very timely. But she said, I've discovered a personal development hack that's proven to be a game changer in my journey of growth. Frequent reflection, which is obviously what we've been talking about today. And she then says, reflection is like taking a pause in the midst of the hustle and bustle to step back and observe yourself, your thoughts and your actions. It's about creating space for introspection, allowing yourself to analyze your experiences and identify patterns and gain valuable insights. And I just thought the way that she wrote it just wraps up perfectly what we've been talking about today.
I really like that. Thank you. So, Charlotte,
yes,
I'm going to hand over to you now, because we do have exciting news
we
for
do.
2024.
We have a bit of a reveal.
We've got a big reveal. I'm doing a drum roll on the table. Don't know if you can hear that.
Don't give up the day job, Lucy.
So I'll just hand over to you to bring us to a close and tell us what we're going to be doing.
Fine. So, as we alluded to at the end of series 1, we do plan to have a series 2. And so Lucy and I have been doing a lot of thinking about what that might look like and what that might entail. And it is going to be a bit different to what we did in series 1, where it was Lucy and I talking about a variety of themes in terms of that job journey. So in season 2, we are going to be joined by some special guests, which we're super excited about. And these guests are going to join us each week, where we'll be talking about a variety of topics that they are subject matter experts in. So it'll be anything from goal setting and staying motivated to how to navigate change, to then looking at skills like leadership and grit and resilience. So we're super excited that in 2024, season 2 will be coming back. And we will be joined by some very special guests and people that we know personally. And I hope you will be joining us and will enjoy the show still with us. So I guess without further ado, I hope everyone has a lovely Christmas or festive period, and wishing you all a very happy new year. And we'll see you in 2024. Goodbye.